I have to confess, I am going through some nostalgia right now. I have a man who's second time leading goal scorer for our national team, Bafana Bafana. We're still trying to figure out the correct numbers for his all-time career goals at Charlton, out in America, and in the PSL as well. I'm talking about Coach Shaun Bartlett. Coach Shaun Bartlett joins me for a conversation. Coach Shaun Bartlett, as I say coach because that's what you are now. But
Yeah.
I want to reminisce a little bit. I don't think, we do this a lot with especially our exports to bring them on a podcast like this and celebrate their playing careers. We've had Lance Davids, we've had Benny McCarthy, we've had Stiga as well, guys that you know very well, at some point even played with. How would you sum up your playing days?
My playing days, it started in Cape Town, and I think growing up in South Africa, you tend to play all sports. I was pretty decent in cricket and tennis, played baseball, but soccer, I think probably at the age of 16, 17, I was told, not I could see, I was told that I could make a career out of it. So
I read somewhere that you were aiming to be a prominent cricket player. Is that true?
I was. I think that was probably the one sport where it sort of came more natural to me. I think the soccer thing I had to work on a little bit more. Even though it's sort of in the genes, family wise, everybody played the game, but I think I had to obviously work a little bit harder in order to be better. But the cricket thing was more natural. Opening bowler, number 3 batsman, which is very unheard of. Normally, opening bowler, you bat number 8 to 9 or even lower down. But I was batsman number 3, so I was an all-rounder, decent fielder as well, and that's how I got into baseball. Throwing from the boundary to the stumps, and someone saw me and said, "Hey, you can play baseball. You can play outfield and do the same thing." So, that's why I enjoyed playing all sports. But the soccer was the one that I think had more the passion than anything else.
Yeah. And you made a lot out of it. Let's talk about your stint. Obviously, the most prominent stint being at Cape Town Spurs.
Yeah.
How does the move come about for you to move abroad? Obviously, since then the rest is history. Moving from USA.
Yeah.
One of a few players that can say they play in the English Premier League.
Sure. Even the whole Cape Town Spurs thing, how it came about for me, it was a blessing in disguise, to be honest. A guy at our church recognized me playing, and then he said he works with someone that plays for Cape Town Spurs, who was Manu Jansen, left back, and he organized a trial for me to go there. So I went, and Sergio Dos Santos was the coach at the time.
Yes.
And he said, "Listen, you're good, but you're very raw. I'm going to send you and Thabo Mngomeni to Vasco for 3 months, and then we'll call you back." Before 3 months were over, they called the two of us. The team was struggling at the time, and Sergio put myself and Thabo into the Spurs first team squad. I think from there, we just both together, we excelled. We did well. I enjoyed playing with Thabo. He's a very tricky player. If you don't know him, you can get confused because
he doesn't look it, but when
a
he
lot
gets
of the
ball,
times he was doing things, and I think the whole stand would move because the way he moves his body and things like that. But we were dynamic together. We were unbelievable. He was sort of providing me with the service, and later on, even David Modise was doing the same when he came. So
there was something special about that team, eh?
I'm telling you,
From
94,
goalkeeper
95.
Andre and Thabo, David.
We had Andre in goal. We had Craig Rosley on the right-hand side. We had Michael Jacobs, Sebo Rodrigues, David Nyati. Roger Links was also playing at the time.
Yeah.
David Modise, Roger Lupia, myself. So myself and Roger Lupia, we were actually the wingers.
Yeah.
And we used to score goals from those positions. I was never a striker. We had a couple of Brazilian guys that came in. Were Pio Nogueira was one after Pirate, and then also Bigo came from Brazil. So yeah, we had an exceptional team. It's a pity, that when we won the Bob Save and the league in '95, the owner decided to sell because he was going to move abroad, and that was the end of Cape Town Spurs.
Yeah, I remember growing up, I had those Kasisutu, we say mapanaki. I don't know
Oh
what,
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. And I had people always say, like, why don't you pick the popular teams? My team was Cape Town Spurs.
Yeah.
So that lineup,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
still remember it because I had all the players that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I just found it special that
Yeah.
this team, everyone is looking at Chiefs, Pirates, your traditional
Sure.
big clubs. But there's something special there
No,
happening in Cape Town.
even for me, when I look at that Cape Town Spurs team, I resemble it to the '96 squad. It had all demographics and backgrounds and diversity, if you want to call it that. From KZN to Joburg to Cape Town to Brazil. So we had players from everywhere, but yet when it came to the field, you didn't even have to speak English because we just knew exactly how to play and understand each other as to what we need to do in order to win games.
Yeah. I'm going to jump forward a little bit because we're still on that Cape Town Spurs. Is that the reason why you took the job to go coach Spurs? Because of also you struggled with the nostalgia a little bit?
No, listen, like I said, and people can never tell me I went to Cape Town Spurs for money because you don't earn money in Cape Town. That's the honest truth. Even as players, you can ask these players, they don't get a lot of money. And club owners actually tell them, you want to earn the big bucks, you've got to go to Joburg, to Sundowns, Pirates, Chiefs, and all these clubs. They can pay you the big bucks. Here, we give you a platform to perform, and then you can obviously move to those clubs. So when the offer came for me to Cape Town Spurs in the old Glad Africa Championship, I didn't even hesitate because it was an emotional decision for me. It's the first club I played for, and I wanted to see them at a higher level. And there was no doubt with the right resources I could achieve the impossible, which we did because in my first 6 months, I went in the middle of the season. We were fighting relegation. We survived relegation, and then within 12 months, we got promotion. So again, I always believe and say that I had the players, I had the technical team, obviously, to do it. But more importantly, it was a miracle, and it was just a gift of God for me, from God, because there's no other way to describe how you can fight relegation and achieve promotion within 14 months.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that Cape Town Spurs stint as a head coach with Calvin Marlin, Nassif Maurice. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
But let's kind of go back a little bit to you leaving Cape Town. And where would you say you played your best football? You went to America when the MLS isn't as commercially viable as it is now. You and Dr. Kumalo, everyone was thinking, where the hell are they going? How was that?
It was an experience, to be honest. Like you've indicated, playing soccer in America was very different. It was very Americanized in the sense because even during our playing days, it was the start of the MLS, which means, there was no draws. So if it ended 1-1, it's the thing they used to call the shootout.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you put two cones on either side of the center circle, and the player stands in the middle with the ball, and you've got 5 seconds to run with the ball and kick the ball before the ref blows again. And that was the shootout to get a result. That was how draws were determined, or a result for that matter, when the game ended in a draw. So the stadiums are always full, like even now. But during those days, my wife used to tell me, these people don't even know anything about football. The stands are full, but they would like, why is he picking the ball up with his hands, outfield player? Or why did the referee blow? What is offside? So the Americans are, they're just great in selling things to their people. And I think that was one of, obviously, the reasons for me to experience a new league. But more importantly, obviously, I knew there's the ultimate goal I wanted to get to, and the country I wanted to end up playing it.
And you did that. Before I get there, the offers that came, resulting in you going to the MLS, were they the only ones, or that was the option that you decided is the better stepping stone, or there were other lower
Yeah.
leagues somewhere in Scandinavia, whatever the case
No,
may be?
but as far as I know, there were two. Obviously, the MLS, maybe three, I would say. MLS, and then there was a club in Belgium. And then also afterwards, I found out. I didn't know this before I left, but Kaizer Chiefs also were interested at the time. Obviously, we just won the league and the cup, and I think they signed David Nyati Modisi from Cape Town Spurs. So I was
So they
one of the
wanted the
players.
three,
Yeah, I was one of the players that earmarked, and I already, well, in those days, it's not actually the player. My club already agreed with MLS that I'm going to be sold to them. Only thing that needed to be determined was obviously my contract. But I think in those days it was very, very tricky, when it comes to transfers and things like that, because clubs were really running the show, if I can put it that way. There was no business managers or agents involved in anything. The club owners were doing everything. And
So who did your personal terms to MLS?
the club owner was David Rodwell. He used to own Shoe City, and Mitch de Abre, that obviously coached the Olympic team as well. At the time, he was doing a dual role. He was coaching Cape Town Spurs and the Olympic team. So, and even that, I can give you a short story about, because when he selected that first team, I was still eligible. And I was furious because I was, like you saw my stats with Spurs, I was scoring goals, and I'm like, how can this guy not select me? I'm under 23. And for a couple of weeks, I just wasn't myself in training, until one day he came to me and said, "What's happening with you? You're off." I said, "You pick a team and I'm not in it." He says, "Yeah, there's a reason."
And I'm banging in goals,
He says, "There's a reason. Wait till tomorrow." I'm like, "Wait till tomorrow?" And then Clive selected me for the senior team. So, and that's why I always tell my players and my own boys also, sometimes you think it's a rejection, but it's just a redirection.
Yeah.
I was so angry, and that's how sometimes you can actually derail your whole career, to be honest, because of one thing that you feel you deserve, but then God has got something else for you in order to be better. And I was selected for the senior national team. And yeah, I could probably say all was forgiven.
Makes sense. Do you remember your transfer fee to the MLS?
I think at the time it was about $160,000, $180,000 to the club itself. But the owner was quite clever, because he kept, I think, 25 or 30% stake. There was a few players that he kept on, for in case they get sold again to another club. So, and that obviously happened when I moved to Switzerland, to FC Zurich. So that's when the extra percentage came in handy.
He was clever having that sell on there.
Yeah.
But you moved to Switzerland as well. Do you feel that's where also your career picks up? And obviously there's the euphoria also of Nations Cup. And there's so many things happening in your life at that
It was also a lot of pressure. I don't know, you guys remember there was a Congolese striker called Chabani Nonda.
Yes.
He played at FC Zurich. He was just sold to Rennes in France. So I've come in from America to replace him. And I think for 10, 12 games, I didn't score. And people were on my case. There's a striker. What you bringing us? He hasn't scored, whatever. And it took, we were in the UEFA Cup at the time, and we went to Ukraine. So that's why I'm quite familiar with this Shakhtar Donetsk.
Yes.
It was my first game and first trip away in Europe. And I managed to score 2 goals. And to be honest, floodgates just opened from there. I couldn't stop scoring. My first son was born, and I even had to do a little ad for TV, since my son has been born, I can't stop scoring, these type of things. So it was great. And after my first season, again, you spoke about offers that came that never signed. That it was one of them, because FC Zurich bought me from America for $2 million. And after my first season being so exceptional in goal scoring and performance, a club called Lecce in Italy came and they made an $8 million offer. So I thought, this is business sense.
It makes sense, yeah. They
4
get their
times
money
more.
back and then more. Yeah.
Exactly. 4 times more than what you paid after like 10 months. Surely you're going to take it. And the club didn't. And as a player, you're thinking, but this is stopping my growth and is stopping me from getting to the next level. And again, it got to me. It didn't do well for a couple of months, and after that, we made the Swiss Cup final, and the coach came and said, "Listen, you just got to forget about it." But I think those are the type of things that can really, when you talk about focus in your mental health, those are things that can really distract you from actually performing on the field.
Yeah, and then where does Charlton then come in?
So Mark Fish moved to Charlton in 2000 in the off season. He moved from Bolton to Charlton, and we had the same sports lawyer, Gary Bloomberg. Him and Glenn used to work together. So Gary does all the European stuff, and Glenn was doing the South African
Local,
stuff.
yeah.
Coming for national team, doing endorsements, things like that. And Gary recommended me to Charlton because they had a striker, Andy Hunt, but he picked up a virus for some reason. Picked up a virus. He just couldn't run. He couldn't train. He was just tired, and they needed the emergency loan. And he said, "Listen, there's a striker in Switzerland," and the assistant manager came up actually 5 times, and I didn't even know. Came to watch me 5 times, and the 5th time, he'd actually Mark and myself went in October to go watch a game at Charlton, and he told me the whole story. How he used to come across and watch me train and then obviously warm up. And the 5th time he came, he watched the warm up and he called the manager, Alan Kirbishley, and he said, "Listen, we better sign this boy now because otherwise clubs will get him. They will pick him up." And I haven't even played a game. This is in the warm up. He says, "I've never seen someone warm up like this. They're heading balls, they volley left and right. And I think we need to get him now." But the ironic part was that the same time Charlton came with a loan, there was a confirmed offer that came for £2 million from Crystal Palace. The only problem was, or not problem, the only issue was Crystal Palace were in the old championship, the first division, and Charlton in the Premier League. So I take a loan deal where I have to go prove myself, or I get a confirmed 3-year contract where I can earn a salary.
Yeah.
And my goal has always been, to be in the Premier League. I can also tell you this: at the age of 10, I wrote on a piece of paper, and that's why I like reminiscing about things like this, because it just brings back, like you say, not just nostalgia, but also when you set yourself a goal and you write it
the
down,
target, and you go for it.
and you go for it. My 3 things were playing on television, which was playing for the national team, and playing in England.
Box tick.
And the only person that knew that was my grandmother, because I grew up staying with my grandmother from very, very young age. And unfortunately, she didn't get to see the 3rd one. But the fact that I achieved all 3 of those goals, for me already was a massive achievement, knowing that I satisfied my grandmother in some way, because I knew obviously what I achieved was massive. And going to England in the Premier League, the Premier League for me is always, like I say, even today, best players want to be in the Premier League because they regard that as the highest level of football. And only the other day, someone told me, like, "So you played in the Premier League against Beckham, Ronaldo, Henry, Terry, Campbell, Keane?" I said, "Yes." "And you scored at Anfield, you scored against United." But yet, this is the tricky part: I never attended an academy.
Wow.
And it actually gives me goosebumps now, because theoretically, this is what I'm trying to get at. I was 10 years behind those guys. Yet I had to be on the same level as far as competing is concerned. We weren't on the same level as salary. We weren't on the same level as fitness. But I had to compete with them on the same level, knowing that I was 10 years behind.
Yeah,
remember,
because we don't know all of that.
in
we
England,
expect you to live up to expectations.
Exactly, because all we see here is, Shaun is in Bafana, so you should be doing well there. He's a decent player. But you don't realize, actually, in England, kids go to the academies at 6 years old. I think recently it was probably more magnified in a sense where Trent Alexander left Liverpool, or leaving Liverpool, and it's like, he's been there for 20 years. So, no, he's only been playing for 7 years.
Yeah.
But he's been there since he was 6.
Yeah.
So
a
he's
long
been
time
there,
for
he's
him.
been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, though, and that's what I'm hoping one day we can actually also employ here. because starting at 15, 16 is too late. That's why in the Premier League they can make their debut at 16 because they've had 10 years already of actually, developing and learning the trade of being a footballer.
Do you think it's part of then the reason why maybe we're not exporting as much?
I think so, definitely. I've said to someone again, we need to start changing the landscape of our football, development. We need to start a lot younger. Some people might be of the opinion that, but you're going to put pressure on the kids. I think the pressure comes more from the parents, not from the coaches or the clubs. My son was started playing football at the age of 4 in England, and you make it fun for them, but they learn the fundamentals. At the age of 8, you could play one-touch football, like most pro teams couldn't. And I think that for me is the crutch of the matter is that you've got to teach them the right things in order to be better at a higher level. The earlier they start, the better I think understanding they will have individually and then eventually as a team what needs to happen on a field.
So what do you think is stopping us from doing that? Why can't the former Bafana players, the 96 winning AFCON team, get together and put a blueprint together and do this?
Yeah, you can put the blueprint together, but everything, we can't just go and implement things. It's got to be approved and it's got to be signed off by the right people, which is SAFA. SAFA are the people that run football in the country. Whatever you want to do has got to go through them, which means they have to sign it off and give their approval. So again, everything stems from the top. In order to put the right programs for development in place, they've got to approve it.
But I'm sure you would agree that the quality is there. We see it now with our teams playing the Champions League and even the junior national teams now. There might not be a lot of preparation in building up to those tournaments, but by just, I wouldn't just say pure talent. Of course, I have to give the technical staff credit, but it shows just the level where we're at.
No, and obviously, I think more recently our junior teams have been doing exceptionally well. So even obviously under 20, qualifying for the World Cup and, how they've gotten, the right coaches in there as well to develop these players. But I think had we done this earlier, at an earlier age, I think a lot of these players probably would have excelled more as well. And like you said, ultimately we want to start moving kids 16 to 20 to Europe. Like the most recent, obviously, it comes to mind is Shaun Campbell. Has gone to Belgium. And these type of talents, I think, will put us back on the, not just the, I think the map as far as football is concerned, but also our national teams will benefit a lot more.
I've always been curious. You come back home and a lot of our players do this. You don't, and I suppose you can give your own spin to it. Why don't you then settle in overseas? If you've played for so long, you've built your life there, your kids are, are going to school there, playing sports there. You come home, you sign for Chiefs, and I think some point you retired, then you came back to play for Celtic, and then obviously you finished your career here at home.
Well, I think part of the reason coming back was, it was a historical moment in our football, 2010 World Cup. And when that got announced, obviously I was still playing in England. And I said to my wife, I would like to be part of that in some way. I know that I might not be playing at the time, but I want to be part of that, obviously, being a historical moment in African football, not just South African. So that's part of the reason why I came back. And then obviously Chiefs, Wits and Sundowns heard that I'm coming back, and the three of them made offers. But the reason I chose the Chiefs is obviously, for me, it's always been the biggest club in South Africa, always had the best players. And that's why I think even when I heard afterwards about, them being interested in me when I left Spurs, that was always the thing, when you knew like Spurs, like Chiefs, Pirates, they were interested, then you were always one of the best players in the country. That's how you were regarded, at these big clubs. So I chose the Chiefs, and a couple of years, won a couple of trophies, Super 8 and Telkom, different coaches. The retiring and coming out was almost like in favor, to be honest, because Mitch de Avray was the coach at Bloemsalt.
Oh, yes, the connection now
So
makes
he was
sense.
fighting relegation. He
He
said,
said, come help
I
me.
need a bit of experience here. I need somebody to come and help me. And I went, and we got out of relegation. And then he decided to take up a technical director post, and Owen de Gama took over. And that's pretty much when, I packed up and I said, no, I've had enough. Because I was on my own in Bloemfontein for 6 months, and my family was here in Joburg. So I decided rather to pack it in, because I had a great career playing all around the world.
You did,
So
you
it was
did.
time to hang up the boots.
You hung up your boots, took up coaching. You've essentially promoted 2 teams, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't keep you long.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong, Coach Shaun Bartlett?
Well, even the coaching thing, I obviously also in England, when you play, you sort of do your licenses while you're playing, which is a great benefit. And I always encourage even players now that I coach in South Africa. It also gives you, a better perspective. If me as a striker, if you can start doing coaching license, I understand Mazola as you play as a midfielder or a defender. I understand your role and responsibilities. So, and then Coach Mushin 2013 gave me a call, 2012, 13, and it's like, listen, stop talking so much on TV now and come help me at Golden Arrows. That was his exact words. I'm like, okay. So I went to assist him for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then Mangoba came, took over from Mushin. He was there for a while, and then Mark Harrison came. And then eventually myself and Bega, the late Bega Pagati, was co-coaches. Last bit of the Premiership status league form, and then we took over completely in the NFD
division.
And yep, that's when we obviously got the club immediately back, and that was 2015. So it's been 10 years now since they've been in the Premiership, which is great. And even to see guys like Sibia, Aqua, obviously call him nickname Suleiman.
Yes.
To see him still playing, there was one of the young players that we promoted along with Lungelo, Dube, the Parasnath twins. There was a few boys obviously that came through the academy.
Yeah.
Which is great. And some of these boys are still playing, which is nice to see.
You obviously, in between that, there was Tugs. There's Cape Town Spurs as well. Anything that you could have done differently? Or did you feel less appreciated in that you were not able to keep your 10 years there? I'm not too sure about Tugs. I suppose it's a little bit of a different story there. But the 2 teams that you led to promotion, letting you go.
Yeah, I always believe, the same thing, like I said, with writing my goals down to achieve. The same thing when I went to Arrows was to get promotion. That was achieved. And I felt, obviously, you wanted to see the team in the PSL. You wanted to possibly have a job. That didn't happen. So I just moved on. The same with Cape Town Spurs, achieving that was for me probably one of the better goals I've set for myself. In a sense, it's the club that was quite close to my heart. And then when things didn't work out, I had to move on. So I've always maintained and said, you can sign a 5-year contract. You're never going to be there for 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's the way I take it day by day. I think that is in our football world, our coaching world, it's a very fickle business, and that's why you have to treat it. If you get emotional about things, you're never going to go far. And there's certain things, especially when it comes to coaching, I've always said and maintained, I don't have to work for a paycheck. If the values and principles don't align with mine, I'm not going to take a job. And I think that's probably why for the last 18 months I haven't taken a club or posted any club. And I think I've learned over the last couple of years as well, how people value you are very different to how you value yourself. I think the perfect example, I said this morning to Coach Andre, I said, like, you buy a bottle of water at the petrol station, it costs you 10 Rand. You buy a bottle of water on the airplane, it's 15 Rand. You buy a bottle of water. So where that water is,
depends
that's how
on
they
your
value
setting.
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I value myself very differently to what club owners might think. So I'm not just going to settle for 10 Rand when I know I'm worth 50 Rand. And I think that sometimes club owners maybe can't take. I don't know if I put it the right way, but or accept. But you're paying me because of my experience, my qualification, more importantly, my time.
Yeah,
Like we always say, time is the most expensive commodity ever.
100%.
So whatever I
Thanks for
give,
your time on the podcast.
whatever I give, you've got to appreciate it, but also there's got to be, proper incentive when it comes to working in a certain environment.
I want to just zoom in a little bit
Yeah.
on that. I know you and I had the first interview you did when you left Spurs. I remember it was with me at Kosafa, and you expanded about this value thing. Like maybe if you can like lift the lid a little bit on it. What are your expectations? What bar have you set for yourself as a coach? Moving forward, and what would it take to get you back in the dugout?
It's very simple for me. I know a lot of clubs have short-term goals, but it's got to be a long-term vision involved. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to achieve as a club? Those type of things. And obviously, for me, it's a project. It's not just a one-time thing where you come and get promotion and then you leave again. And I also, like I think indicated in that particular interview, is there need to be a lot more support given to especially South African coaches when they're in a position to get the right resources in order for them to achieve success. I don't think they always give the South African coaches what they want in order to achieve a goal. And I think that for me is very, very frustrating. And that's why I'm not just going to jump at any opportunity in order to work. And I think that might have put off a few clubs maybe not approaching me. But at the end of the day, you're hiring me as a coach. I'm working with you, not for you. That's a thing that also people don't understand. We want to achieve the same thing, which is success for the club.
100%.
So let me do my job. This thing of coaches being told by owners to play X, Y, Z, it doesn't really help because end of the day, I don't get the result. You're going to fire me. And I think if I can make a decision to play certain players and it doesn't work, then I know my head is on the block. But I've made that mistake, not been told to do certain things in order to achieve a goal.
But are you open to the idea, though, that in as much as it is their time and money and investment, they are well within their rights to not influence the selection, whatever, but to call you in and afterwards,
listen, I've even said to a young coach earlier, there's a massive difference between interference and intervene. Intervene is when I'm not doing well and you want to recommend and give suggestions to maybe changing things or try something different. But if you're interfering, you're telling me you have to play this one and that one and that one, then it's not going to work. Myself and the technical team, we are with the team every day, watching players, analyzing players, looking at different strategies and tactics. So we've got to make that decision. And I don't make the decision on my own. You've got a technical team as far as making sure that, different departments are looked after. The goalkeeper, obviously, we know, again, strange one, but the goalkeeper is the only player on the field that's got a coach, a specialized coach. You don't have a striker coach, you don't have a defender coach, you don't have a midfielder coach. But the goalkeeper is the one that's got a coach. So you've got to speak to him on a daily basis, get the feeling of obviously which keeper is looking good, which keeper we should go with, and then the other coaches will give input regarding the other 10.
We're going to switch now to our Q&A, but I want to close off with this. How soon will we see you on the dugout? Or South African clubs are just never going to meet your standards?
No, it's not that. It's not about my standards being too high. I think it's just we've got to compromise in some way. That's for me is probably the main word. We've got to compromise. Again, and this is something I learned from my playing days, and which obviously, hopefully, some of our players will also realize. A contract is an agreement between two people. It's not just you being happy and I'm not. That's not a contract. So when I ask for 50 Rand and you say 20 Rand, it doesn't mean I must sign for 20 Rand. We've got to compromise and say, okay, we'll get to 40 Rand. I said, okay, that's fine. Let's agree on that. Then we're both happy, And I think that's what sometimes people don't understand. Sometimes you have clubs that don't even come back to you. You know, they say 20 rand, you say 50, and they said, okay, no problem. We'll speak to someone else. I said, okay, that's fine. And that's the reality of life. But I think, hopefully soon I'll be back on the touchline, because even the referees are asking me when I'm coming back. Not that I give them a lot of grief, but I think they miss me on the touchline.
That's how we close it off, our interview with Coach Shaun Bartlett. Hopefully we'll get to see him soon on the touchline. As I said, second all-time goal scorer for our national team, Bafana Bafana. Banged goals all over the globe, Switzerland, USA, and of course one of a few players to play in the English Premier League.